Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Hope everybody's all right out there, getting ready for the weekend. Maybe get outside if you can in your area and all that fun stuff. Let's kick it off today with some quick updates. First up, if you're looking for something fun to do this weekend, tomorrow I'm going to be teaching an exclusive PADI Project Aware Whale Shark Awareness course online. It's tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Cabo time. Then on Sunday, Ellen's going to be teaching a coral reef conservation course, so definitely check those out. Then next week, we're starting to switch to our new reduced schedule on Ocean Stories. We've got two really great talks that we've been working on trying to get together for a while now. First up, on Thursday, we have Miriam joining us. She's a population geneticist and marine scientist who's going to be teaching us about some of every diver's favorite animal, sea turtles. So she's going to be talking about, the life of these incredible animals, where they migrate from, as well as her research here in Mexico. And you're going to be pretty surprised when you start to hear where they're coming from and how far these animals are journeying just to come to the shores here in Baja and everything. Then on Friday, we've got something really awesome planned. We've been trying to work out for a bit to get the scheduling right and everything like that. We've got Octavio Alberto joining us to take us on a stunning photographic journey of why we should care about the health of our oceans and all that. If you haven't heard of Octavio before, he's a National Geographic photographer, an assistant professor at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, as well as a laundry list of inspiring other projects and everything. He's the director of the Gulf of California project, co-founder of Mars Mexicanos, one of the creators of Natural Numbers, as well as a senior fellow at the International League of Conservation Photographers, and the list just goes on and on and on. He is an incredible human and an incredible photographer. So this is a talk you definitely don't want to miss. These two new talks just went up on the Ocean Stories webpage this morning, so you can get signed up and everything like that later today. So let's get ready for today. Who's ready for a special talk this morning? Joining us from California today, we've got Jack Fishman, Community Conservation Officer from Project Aware. How are you doing today, Jack?
Doing well, Jay. Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting to be able to share some of these stories.
Awesome, man. We're looking forward to it. Can't wait to hear the stories and see what you got to share and everything like that. So without further ado, let me stop sharing my screen and I will pass it over to you.
Okie dokie. All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Jay. It looks like you guys got some amazing content coming up. And for anyone listening in, I know I've been recently really excited about watching some of these ocean stories, and I hope that you guys continue to watch these and take these courses. Again, my name is Jack Fishman. I work at the Project Aware Foundation, which is a full nonprofit that is partners with PADI, which many of you guys are probably familiar with. And I am going to push this away. So today, what I wanted to do is give you guys a really cool introduction into what Project Aware does, into how that we work with the dive community across the globe to inspire change, inspire conservation actions, and make sure that people across the globe in the diving communities feel confident about the work that they're doing to make the ocean a better place for everyone. So yeah, let's look a little bit more about what we're going to discuss here. We're going to introduce some of the courses that you guys might have available, just like Jay will be offering tomorrow. Ways besides the course that you guys can get involved. There's so much actions that you guys can do to participate in, to make your dives more meaningful, and just add little bits of citizen science into every action that you guys are doing. And that is the scope of which we're going to dive a lot more into today. And then, of course, I want to share some really specific and meaningful stories for me that I've experienced on the travels, because as the community conservation officer for Project Aware, my role is to physically travel to many different dive communities across the globe, work with dive owners, work with scuba instructors of varying types and skills levels to build confidence in the training that we do for conservation, and of course, put on some big actions and make some memorable stories, because that's why we're all in the dive industry, is to share some of these amazing stories and really bring that to the attention of the rest of the globe. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. So I wanted to give you guys a really proper introduction to Project Aware, because a lot of people often think that we are just directly PADI, when in fact we really are a true and tried nonprofit that is separate from PADI, but we work so closely with our partners there. A lot of the things that we do wouldn't be able to be done without the support of PADI, and of course, the enthusiasm of all you guys in the dive industry and many others across the globe. But what's really important to know is that while we are a small group of passionate conservationists supporting you guys, actually no more than 14 at the current state of things, it's really about the network of you guys. It's this network of dive leaders, over 1 million strong, that really make up the actions that we are. So while we are a small group of individuals supporting that action, it's you guys really bringing the value to the rest of the globe, and we're here to support that. So as much as I can do, and I can train, and I can travel and learn from you guys, it's the best part of this experience to be able to support all the actions, programs like that are happening at Dive Ninjas, learning about these debris issues and learning how to conserve the animals in the area. These are all examples of things that we'll go into throughout this presentation. We are present throughout the globe as well, so you can find us here in California, which is where I am. We have some passionate folks of ours over in the UK and Australia as well. So we're working in different time zones and different networks to make sure that you guys receive all the support you need. But what's really cool is we actually will work with the world's largest underwater marine debris reporting database. We're going to talk more about that throughout the presentation, but if I can bring your attention to the graph on the top right here, you'll see that we've removed, of course, not us, but in fact, the dive community at large, nearly 1.7 million pieces of marine debris. We're going to talk about the significance of that, but what's amazing is just how that has happened as a combined effort from the dive community since 2011, when we started this reporting program, and how, I think one of the significant things that I like to introduce at this point is from 2011 to 2018, we hit our first million pieces removed, which is a huge effort because Project Aware is supporting marine debris conservation, marine debris education and training to properly remove things underwater. And we're going to talk about some of the cool stories. But if it took from 2011 to 2018 to hit that 1 million as the momentum built, what's amazing is that, as you can see, we're nearly at 1.7 with, of course, the current culture playing a factor. But from 2018 to now, we almost hit 75% of that goal we hit in the years prior. So I think that's just a testament to how important conservation has become in recent years, and just the momentum of actions that we'll continue to showcase. So that's a brief introduction to what we're doing, and we'll talk a bit more of those in detail. So on top of the marine debris issues that we like to face, which we'll go into again in just a moment, some of the other things that Project Aware is working really hard on is fighting for protections for sharks and rays and different animal species. We know that some of the most concerned animal species right now, it comes down to trade and protections for them. So our staff has an entire policy team that is present at any given time, sitting at major meetings in the UN, at CITES, at these big policy-centric summits. And what we'll do is we'll send out campaigns to the dive community for all agencies and all ocean enthusiasts to participate in. And so I encourage you guys to keep an eye out for that, because our last major campaign with mako sharks, encouraging others across the globe to share their voice for protections for these animals, we at Project Aware will bring that voice via videos and social media statuses and just some of your amazing pictures, and bring that back to these policy leaders in these major meetings with leaders from every nation you can think of that is participating. And we share your voice directly with them to make this such a humanized effort to really show that the dive community cares. And we at Project Aware love being able to take your voice to be able to protect animal species. One thing that I want to go over a little bit more, which we will shortly, is this responsible shark and ray tourism guide. It's actually an amazing collaboration between the World Wildlife Foundation, Project Aware, and the Manta Trust. And we actually sort of created, as appropriate as it might be now, a sort of social distancing guide to sharks and rays, especially when operating in the dive industry. So we'll look at some examples and kind of how that works, but it's an amazing tool that we've created based on real stories and interactions from the dive community to really be able to share the momentum that we're doing with those who are interested in conservation. So yeah, tons of stuff with policy. That's what we're working on behind the scenes. And we're taking your voice to bring that to the leaders who will potentially and hopefully be able to do something productive about that. And then going back to the clean ocean side. So we're working for a return to a healthy ocean. And of course, Project Aware's mission is to use the dive community to also return to a clean ocean. So as I mentioned briefly, Project Aware runs the world's largest underwater marine debris database. But what does that really mean? It means because we mobilize divers and we work with ocean enthusiasts who have access to the water, we know that the marine debris issues we're going to face, they're going to be down below the waves. And really, who has access to that? You guys, divers, ocean enthusiasts, people who are going out in boats and facilitating these programs. This is how we get involved, and this is how we make this effort the most impactful and the most meaningful. So as we move forward with this, it's amazing to see that we've now had, nearly 12,000 surveys to equal some 1.7 million pieces removed. And again, we'll dive into that a little bit more about why we work more with the pieces instead of the pounds removed, because I know a lot of you guys will come out of your cleanups and work with so many of you saying, oh, we got 500 pounds here. And that's an amazing effort. We're going to talk about just how important the pieces are as well. As you can see, there's plenty of people participating in these programs. But what's also really cool is that many people may not know is that in our marine debris database, where we report and control the data flow over time, which of course helps us understand the trends of marine debris, we're also seeing the largest underwater entangled animal database. And this is really important because with marine debris might come some of those more unfortunate stories where you might find animals who have been negatively affected by marine debris. And us divers have the training, the patience, and the experience to potentially free those animals. So our database can also show a great story, a great trend of animals that may have been negatively affected by marine debris, may have been entangled. But then there's all these success stories with images and pictures to share in our database of animals that were let free, or of course, animals that needed to be documented for local governments to understand. So there's a lot of things happening here. And one more thing that I think is super important in regards to our debris programs is also how many sites that we measure and data report that are free of debris. Because if you actually think about it, 0 is also a number from a data perspective. But more to that, if we know that you've been cleaning up a site for maybe a few months within our programs, which we'll talk more about again, then you might know that if that site is finally clean, you've done your job. You've done justice to that dive site to make sure that your presence, your actions have led to a clean site. So from here on out, if you're measuring something that's clean, let's say we have one of those big holiday events, right? You might expect it to be a little bit dirtier at that point. That's when we'll start to see these trends be important and the measuring of a clean site return to a rubbish filled one. That's when we'll start to know what the link to why that happened. And it's really fascinating and really enjoyable to work with the dive community to see that come to fruition. So I know that some of you guys might be attending Jay and Dive Ninja's class tomorrow, which is amazing. And just to give you guys a brief introduction to how we are working with the dive community at large through training courses, and especially right now in this current culture that we are all experiencing, working from home, enjoying more things that are a little bit more local, how to get involved with conservation, whether it be contacting Dive Ninjas for any of these opportunities here between our Project Aware specialty and our coral reef conservation specialty. These courses are meant to be engaging and provide value for the local communities and dive centers without actually having to get in the water yourself. So we've worked really hard to bring some of that to the attention and gotten really creative with some of this two-way learning and features like Zoom, which I think is going to play a much larger role in how we all do things. And I'm sure many of you guys listening will have some different opinions on how we could use that better. And honestly, at the end of this, I'll show how you can contact me and contact myself at Project Aware or our team. And you guys can give us your feedback. We love hearing that. And the best part about this experience is bringing this value to the community and hearing your thoughts in return. So we'll save that at the end. You might have some questions, but there's going to be a lot more interesting stuff to talk about. So we will move on forward. Again, some of the other kinds of courses that we're going into comes into the Dive Against Debris specialty, which is training based on the actions that we'll talk about today, and the shark conservation specialty. I know for any of you here who are interested in getting more involved with the Dive Ninja team, this is going to be something that you'll really see come to fruition, especially with Dive Against Debris once we can all get back in the water. So again, we're working really hard to deliver this learning and creating new exciting ways that you can be taking courses outside the realm of diving, and of course bring that value back when you return. That's really the most important part, I'd say, with this, because again, we want to focus on the exciting stories, how that you as a diver and ocean enthusiast can get more involved with what we're doing, and if you'd like, show you that there are better ways to increase the value of your training, increase that level and get more involved with local dive centers, not just here, but around the globe as well. So I wanted to take an example here and go into how we're kind of focusing on the training that we're doing and how we're also meant to kind of dive more into the work that we're doing as well. So when you see something like this is actually taken from our Project Aware specialty, which I think is kind of nice because it's just a good introduction to the work that we do at Project Aware and the work that you guys can do as divers. This Project Aware specialty is formed out of these 10 tips. So you can see here that protecting underwater life is one of the more fundamental things that we want to focus on. And so, it changes everywhere you go. I've been diving in places where you might be in a marine sanctuary and you're not allowed to wear gloves because they might think that gloves would actually encourage touching of marine life and ecosystems. And of course, we want to be mindful of divers that our presence in the underwater has a physical impact on the ocean world. So as a new diver, as an experienced diver, you want to be as mindful as possible when interacting with animals, all the way from, stories of what you guys have seen. And, throughout the questions, I know we're going to have a lot of questions and answers. So I do like making this a little bit more interactive, although right now, I encourage you guys to think this through. But you can see in the bottom right, I've posed a question back to you guys for any kind of question-centric or policy-centric or even just regulation-centric questions you guys might have at the end. Think about what kind of animal interactions you guys might have experienced and how we can kind of tie that into a conservation and diving perspective. I know one that I always like to use is just, how it comes to taking pictures of animals underwater. A lot of us are enthusiasts about taking pictures. And of course, the best way to enjoy an animal's presence is to be present in the moment with it. Rather than chasing it or seeking out a better angle for the photo, we want to make sure that we're actually being mindful of our presence in the water and of course their trajectory while swimming. So if we see a turtle, the turtle's on its own trajectory here, and this diver has taken it to swim parallel rather than in front, rather than to halt the presence of where that animal is going, as you can see in the middle of this photo. And these are just the kind of things that we're working on with our Project Aware 10 tips to deliver to divers and those who may not be divers yet, more importantly, to help them understand why interacting with ocean animals and the responsibility that we share as divers and ocean enthusiasts is so important to be able to bring that back to the rest of the world as we move forward for the work that we are doing together. So here's kind of cool. I know this might seem like a lot of words, but I'm going to explain why it's so interesting. And this is something moving back to that responsible shark and ray tourism guide that I was talking about briefly before. And it might be, a lot of words, a lot of things to consider, but what's actually really interesting is that this responsible shark and ray tourism guide, again, made in tandem with the World Wildlife Foundation, Manta Trust, and Project Aware, does such good diligence to actually working with the science, working with the dive operators, and coming to a fair conclusion about the proper types of interactions that you should have with animals of that caliber, of sharks and rays. Maybe some of you guys have been shark diving before, and we do support shark diving at Project Aware because we know that there are sustainable ways to do this. And we've worked with the scientists and the successful and responsible dive operators to make an actual score, an actual in-depth analysis of how you can do that safely and how all the experiences you guys love and know can be done in a way that actually benefits and supports dive communities, and then most importantly, the animals themselves. So you can see here, it's kind of funny at times. You might notice that some of the criteria coming into, how much education does a dive center provide? We know that, for example, someone like Dive Ninjas and their expeditions does an amazing job educating the public about the importance of animals that they're interacting with, and then how in-water safety is important. All these criteria would be an excellent score, I am sure of it. But the idea is that you, as a diver, or as a potential tourist, or as a potential customer of a dive operation, can be armed with the knowledge that you need based on real science to take this on your future dive expeditions and actually be mindful about the experiences you're doing. To have that extra thought in the back of your head and go, you know what, I think we were really close to the animals that day. Was that supposed to happen? Was that meant to be a part of the experience? And this is the kind of way that this tool that is available free on our website can be useful to you guys. I think maybe at the end, I'll include some extra links that, when we upload this, that you guys can access some of the resources if you ever just want to do some more learning. I'll share some more photos in just a moment so that, make sure that this gets as interesting as possible. But what's amazing here is that These are real tools that you guys as divers can use to actually make meaningful and more conservation-centric decisions when diving into your next adventure. So that's really the introduction to what I want to show here. It goes anywhere from, of course, are they actually participating in research here at the bottom left, and a score of 1, to, wow, not only are they participating in research, but there's a scientist on board. They're actually collecting data simultaneously throughout the experience. And there's so much more effort that's being put in than just taking you to see some animals. It's actually not only benefiting the animals, but maybe the long-term survival as well. And these are the kind of thoughts that we at Project Aware like to get people thinking about as we move into this world, and especially returning to the one that we all want to see again. So I like to show here a beautiful manta ray, one that I was able to capture in Hawaii, just from a perspective that I think would be a responsible shot here. It's taken from behind. I'm not in front, by any means hampering its swimming. It swam well over my head. And at that point, I waited to just kind of maintain my position in the water as it swam over me. And then once it was a nice fair distance away, I was able to take a photo. And I just think that's a really good, example here. We're not chasing it. I'm not right on its tail. I'm still underneath the animal so that it can move in any direction. It's free of my ability to interfere with it. And that's the kind of mindset that we're trying to get in when it comes to conservation and interacting with them, especially as divers. So right here, it's kind of cool. You guys might want to know some more details. We were using the manta ray just before as an example of how it might be cool to interact with them. And here is a perfect example of the actual social distancing guide and interactions with manta rays. Maybe you guys knew that, it really should only be 10 people or so, or that kind of interactions. And that's what we're trying to spread more awareness for, is how far you should be. Obviously, in terms of the physical interactions, many of them would be no, but it's giving you that information based on the science and operators that we work with. So providing that example and working with the types of signs and education that we should know, it's all here. And you guys can read that, and dive centers more can use that to kind of build programs that will be very productive for all of their future endeavors. And so you guys can look at this for a moment, but of course, I will provide some of these resources afterwards if you guys want to flip through it. There's some really cool pictures, there's some really great examples. Maybe you guys have a favorite shark species out there, and chances are that we have a specific slide, just like you can see here, based on the actual shark species that you're interested in and how to interact with them properly. And so that's our goal, is to encourage people to go see these animals. We don't want to discourage divers to not be interacting with marine animals or ocean environments. In fact, we want them to do that more, but we want to learn that there is science and education, really great conservative ways to do this, and benefiting all parties involved, including the animals. So here's just a fun little one, just from the Bahamas. We were working with Stewart's Cove, a number of operations that maybe you guys are familiar with, and sharing some of the conservation here. Of course, we're keeping our eyes on the sharks that are in front of us, and then we have some people that are present and working with them. So just some fun examples here of how it's possible to interact with them. But of course, you see that we're present here representing some Project Aware, doing things that we want to do in a safe and comfortable environment. So what does it mean to be a debris activist? How can you guys get involved? And that's really what I want to talk about as we go into the context behind a lot of these stories that I've done in the dive industry. And in the travels, in working with dive centers, it's evident as can be that many people have a lot of experience with debris, right? Maybe you guys have been walking down the street and you've seen, some litter on the floor. That's something that's always in the back of our head, but at the same time, we might not actually be, considering that as frequently. And that's something that we're trying to do when it comes to diving against debris, because as soon as you go underwater, when you see a plastic bottle, it's like burning in your sense of vision right there in the corner of the reef, right? Instinctively as a diver, as someone who loves the ocean, that if you see trash, it just doesn't belong. And it's really fascinating to think about it like that, because if you actually think that you might be walking down the street and you walk over a bottle, which of course I'm guilty of just as much as many other people, it doesn't have quite the same effect. But then when you bring the awareness back underwater, because everything is so in tune, you're in a whole new world, it's just an amazing experience, and you see that debris, you just have that immediate thought where it's really not supposed to be there. What can I do about it? Should I remove it? Of course, if you can, if it's within the scope of your skills. If it's a plastic bottle, maybe it's not so difficult, but there are many other issues at hand. And so the idea here is that if we're meant to go out and discover these things that are sites unknown, or sites unsightly, more likely, that we want to remove debris, how can we do that safely, and how are we going to get involved? And so Project Aware is working really hard to develop a slew of programs that allow you guys to contact local dive centers and discover that they're adopting dive sites. They're committing to submitting that marine debris over time, really making an impact, not just in their local community, but beyond the scope of that, so that they can get involved and make a difference over time. And we've seen some success stories, which I will share with you very shortly, again, about how people removing debris, both as a massive community, can get the local politicians involved, local businesses, and make it more a part of the culture, where this awareness of the debris that we always had. And so we're going to kind of look here and see exactly how this can do. I'm going to give you guys a nice visualization, which I know is always good, because I can talk about debris all the time, but I think it's always better to just be able to see what's in front of you and really understand what we're looking at. So what's cool about this photo, and I really love presenting this photo, is that it's actually an art exhibit in Europe. And what's really interesting is that, yes, it is actual marine debris. It's not like someone staged this. People recovered various amounts of marine debris and put it in this art exhibit in this format. And you guys can see that it goes out pretty far out there. But upon looking a little bit closer, you'll notice that most of it is more than likely plastic. And so, yes, it is plastic. You'll see the plastic bins in the tan coloration, even that red semi like pool or container, that's all made out of plastic. But if you look a little bit closer, you'll see little tufts of green in between all the tan plastic colors. And that is fishing net. That's fishing line. Most people associate underwater debris with, of course, plastic bottles and plastic pieces. But according to our database and according to the divers' voices that we've listened to, the world's most common underwater item is going to be that fishing gear. And we know that, much like an iceberg, most of the problem lies underwater. You won't see much fishing gear floating at the surface, although it's very common to be able to see floating fishing nets as well. But most of it is going to be underwater. Most of it's going to need that diver's attention to go underwater and really tackle these issues head on. And so I'm going to kind of introduce this picture a little bit further, in that this exhibition was meant to introduce a state of understanding on how much marine debris is actually entering the ocean at a given time. And so what I'm asking here is that I ask you guys to think about for a moment that this is actually a reflection of how much marine debris is entering the ocean in a certain amount of time. And to give you guys a little bit more context on that one, even, the amount of time that it takes for this amount of debris to enter the ocean is less than 5 minutes. But if you guys want to, take a guess and just, again, process this for the end when we have some more interaction time, that it's less than 5 minutes. And in fact, I'm going to give you more context. It's less than 1 minute. And the idea here is that this is meant to show in a reasonable form how much marine debris enters the ocean in actually 15 seconds. So I know that's a big deal. It's kind of hard to imagine all of this enters the ocean in 15 seconds. The way I like to introduce it is, again, it's not like there's trucks going in, just, all right, guys, time to hit the quota, back it in. Of course, that's not happening from a single source. It's happening all over the globe at once. So while I finish this sentence, this amount of debris and about this type of percentage, what you're seeing here, has entered the ocean. Although it seems kind of, doom and gloom in that sense, it's actually fair to say that during this time in the corona culture of sorts, we have seen a lot less marine debris entering the ocean as less people are out interacting with the environment, which is a given. You might have heard stories about some animals swimming in some more places and some better clarity and less pollution. And that's absolutely true to some degree. But we have yet to kind of get back into the equation and really see what's been, affecting the marine environments from a debris perspective. But we do know that has been much less than before. So that's great news, for us. And if only we can take these values and learn from them. So now, how are we going to do this as divers and ocean enthusiasts? How are we going to tackle this problem? What can we do about it? And how can we make a difference? Well, the first thing is we have to know what we're going to be able to take from the ocean environment and what we can't. In the top left, you'll see probably a glass bottle covered in just a little bit of algae, nothing too fancy. It's sitting on a coral though, and that's something we don't want to happen. We know that corals are fragile. They make up the entire ecosystem for coral reefs, and that they provide housing, safety, structures, you name it, for all these marine species that we encounter. So a plastic bottle that could be sitting on a coral is something that we really want to bring our attention to, because a physical contact with a sensitive and very delicate organism could leave more injury to that animal than ever before. And so us, by removing it, it's a simple process of us picking it up gently, removing it from the coral, and providing very little friction or impact on a physical sense. And that's the easy part. Seeing a bottle of something, although, I wonder if you guys saw it right away, because the algae brings that color back. It's almost like this awesome treasure hunt where we're going underwater looking for marine debris issues, but some of them might look a little bit different than you're used to, which is why we have these pictures in front of us. And the plastic, the glass bottle does, become easier to see once you know what you're looking for, and that's the goal. In the bottom left, and we'll kind of go, straight downwards here, you'll see that we have one of those ugly 6-pack rings. And to my credit, I haven't seen a lot of them anymore. Maybe you guys have, I don't know. But of course, we know that they are easy to catch on to things from coral to animals. And anytime we see that, we've got to get that plastic off the reef. And there's a bigger reason at hand why it's so important to get plastic off the reef. And that's because plastic doesn't degrade in the same way that you would, say organic matter. And for those who may or may not know this information, plastic is being affected by the sun, being affected by the exposure to ocean elements, both underwater and above. And maybe here's a good one for you. Maybe you guys have been on the beach before. Maybe even walking down the beach and you pick up a plastic bottle. You ever picked up a plastic bottle on the beach and maybe it was just kind of broken a little bit and it just kind of broke in your hands, kind of like crumbled almost? That's what's happening to plastic over time. It's going through a process called photodegradation, where the sun's impact and the ocean's impact, of course, more of the sun, are playing a role in breaking it down, making it more brittle. And that state is what leaves plastic bottles to kind of crumble and break into smaller and smaller pieces. Many of you guys might know what microplastics are. Well, what microplastics really end up is the journey of plastics. They start as a plastic bottle, but then end up into many smaller pieces. And that is how we start to get this exposure to microplastics and the engagement that we are trying to fight for. Because if we can stop plastic at the source, we can stop removing it first, then it won't have a chance to break into those smaller pieces and enter the ocean ecosystem. In the top right, we have some fishing gear. And one of my story examples here will show a better kind of picture of what that might look like in mass. But that's certainly a lot of fishing gear present in one small location. And we need to make sure that we're using our patience, that we're not grabbing things just because we see them immediately, and really working to do our diligence to remove this from ocean environments. And the bottom right, just one more I'd like to introduce, is how we can see that we had a plastic jug before and after, and then you can see that it has some coral on it. So we know that if, according to the scientists we work with, if a plastic device has coral on it, then regardless of how, ugly the plastic might be in an ocean environment, the coral has now taken over and is now its home. Just like you should always check inside of the glass bottle on the top left if there's any ocean critters who have made it their home. Things like octopus and other crustaceans might be inside now. And so we always want to make sure before we're just rushing to remove the debris because we know that it's not supposed to be there, there are circumstances where the debris has become a part of the ocean environment, either due to time or, of course, as you can see in the bottom right, because coral has now taken over. And coral is a very important part of the ecosystem. So anytime coral is growing, we will agree that that is part of the ocean environments. You guys might have some more questions about this, so feel free to ask, and I can provide very specific examples. But the most important takeaway is that this process will be very dependent both on your skill level and much more on the local regulations of where you are. Some places will just give a blanket statement, hey, there's coral on it, end of story, it belongs regardless of the item that it's growing on. Some places will say, hey, we actually have a local coral restoration organization. Can you tell us where the coral was, but still leave it there so that we can send some people who have better skill sets and an understanding of how to protect that coral to remove the plastic and simultaneously replant the coral somewhere safer. So these are types of routines that we go through, and we work with many different communities on these. So again, if you have questions on it, please feel free to ask, and I'll give you guys as many examples as I can. So next step for you guys is you guys can actually submit the data to. If you guys are divers, you guys can go to any sort of vacation. The goal at Project Aware is to allow you guys to have the skills and experience and a little bit of the knowledge to make every dive a survey dive. Because if everyone is recording the issues that we're seeing, then much more quick will we be able to remove the debris and understand the sources from where it's coming from and what debris we're finding. So you guys can go to our website at projectaware.org, and it's free. In the top right-hand corner, you can sign up, make a profile, and you'll be able to download our mobile app A mobile app is just like almost like submitting a dive log, except during the dive log, the only extra step we're asking for, just like you'd be familiar with, is what debris did you find? And share some of the photos and even some of the stories, because we at Project Aware, we love nothing more than sharing the stories that you guys have in the dive industry and that you're hearing on your trips. And we'll talk more about that, how to stay connected with us later. But maybe we can include some more resources at the end if you guys want to get involved, just step-by-step ways that you guys can sign up and really bring some of the value on your dives. Because if you're going to log your dives, we encourage you to use our app and submit the data that you might find if you're removing marine debris and doing your part. Because ultimately, we want to thank you, and the ocean wants to be able to understand what's happening inside of her. So recording the data looks a little bit like this. Maybe you guys participated in diving against debris or not. But again, what's important is that diving against debris is not just a course, it's very much the action. And so we're hoping to get people more involved with the actions that are happening underwater. And in that respect, we're seeing here that we want to know, who is responsible for leading the dive, how long you were down there. As you can see, it might be hard to see just on your computer screens, but we can do a better walkthrough, afterwards and so on if any of your questions. We're looking to break down the categories that we might find from plastics to metal and so on. And we need to know, where you were. Of course, that's really important. So if you can share a little bit of your GPS coordinates and some of the area explored, those are all things that we have tools for on our app. So luckily you won't have to necessarily get on the boat GPS and write that down physically, but we still use the data cards and the slates for many of the events, mostly to tally up the data we're looking for. But the mobile app does a great job bringing that ease of, hey, where was I? Where am I? How can I submit this data? How can I share this information with Project Aware so that we can help bring some more attention to the local policy leaders and make some change over time? And so ultimately, this leaves us with a story of hope. And this is going to be a really great segue into some of those stories where this hope is working just in the most effective manner that we can think of. And so collecting data is so important. And we were talking about earlier why I said that collecting pieces is very specific to us and more important than collecting pounds. And just to give you guys a visualization here, you can see a plastic bottle on the right. And so let's say we went on a dive, in Florida. I used to do a lot of diving when I used to work down there as an instructor, and we would remove marine debris of various kinds, and we would always find anchors. I'm not sure how every time that boats would leave their anchors underwater, but it comes down to knowing your way around the reef, right? Because if you get stuck on a coral or reef, these are things we must know, and it would be better if there was a reporting method for people who are making accidents underwater to say, hey, I know that we made a mistake, but this is where it's supposed to be. Can you as divers go down and fix it? And that's the type of program that we would work on in the Florida Keys. An amnesty system, if you will, about people justifying where they were, where their traps might have been after a storm, if they're moved. And so these are things we all wanted to know. It comes down to the amount of pieces, not necessarily the weight of the item. Because we know that if we remove an anchor underwater, it's probably going to weigh somewhere between 20 and maybe even up to 50 pounds. So if we say we removed 50 pounds on a diving and spree, that's great. And you removed an anchor that equaled or was equivalent to 50 pounds. However, if we're removing tons of plastic bottles in a harbor, for example, and I encourage you guys to think for a second, maybe you guys have been on a local pier, or maybe you've just been in front of that restaurant that you like that's on the waterfront. Next time just look down, or maybe you can in your mind's eye, and think if you can see any smaller items of plastic and varying debris that you would have encountered there, because that is what we're looking to collect and measure. Because for example, if I told you that we had 50 pounds removed and that anchor equaled 50 pounds as opposed to 50 pounds of plastic bottles, then take a moment and imagine how many plastic bottles it would possibly take to equal 50 pounds, right? It could potentially be up to 75 to 100 plastic bottles, or even more, considering if they're empty, of course, how that would equal that weight. So the significance is much clearer when you can put into perspective the amount of pieces you're moving. Because although we can remove hundreds of pounds of dive or hundreds of pounds of cleanup, we need to understand what the majority of that issue is we're tackling. So if it's plastic, hundreds of pounds of plastic to anyone who might be listening is pretty significant. And that is why we're trying to share those stories as detailed as possible. Because if we know that plastic bags or plastic bottles are the biggest issue, then let's take a look at the local restaurants that are in that area and see what they're supplying. Is it maybe attributed to the products that they provide? We're going to find out, and that's what we want to know. So all of this supports Project Aware's mission to return to a clean ocean. And we know that if you guys as divers can have some of the confidence and experience to submit data and to make every dive a survey dive, then that's how you lead by example, and other people understand why you're doing this. Because asking questions is the best part that we can do to fixing this mess. To take a deeper dive, for lack of a better word, to understand exactly why we're doing what we're doing. And so with that, I'm going to shift gears now and talk about some of the success stories that we've had in the field, and just amazing ways and future events even, and hopefully when things return to that state of normality we all certainly want, how you guys can participate in events near you and how you can find out where they're happening. So dive against debris in the community. Here are just a couple of small examples and then more specific case studies, if you will. But what are dive communities doing? We know that dive communities with a lot of young people and training centers, people who are offering education for divers to become from recreational to professional level. They're often integrating conservation actions into what they're doing. In the top left here, this was taken from an all instructor candidate led dive against debris in Bali, Indonesia. And it was really fun because you're taking a skill set of people who are training to be professionals, and you set them on this treasure finding mission, and you make it a little bit of a competition. You say, the candidates last time, they managed to get, maybe 50 pounds and 150 pieces. I think you guys have to beat that. And so it becomes this exciting adventure for everyone to literally dive in and find as much as they can in a safe and productive way. Because as we're training them to be professional divers, we also want to train them to have the value of patience and good buoyancy, because that's the most important thing to successfully removing marine debris and tackling all that we want to do. And so, we can look at exactly what dive communities are doing and take some more examples. As we go through here on the bottom left, this was taken from a customer-centric dive. All of those guys are tourists jumping into Anthony Keys Resort in Roatan, Honduras. And they wanted to lead a dive against debris and have different boats go out. And so they have, I don't know, something like 6 or 7 boats or even more. And they had 3 or 4 of those boats entirely dedicated to dive against debris, to take different customer groups and compare the actions of those work and take them all out. These were a fun way to integrate dive against debris as a recreational style dive, but also something that's really exciting to take part in. Because if you come back with more debris than others, then maybe there's some incentives, maybe there's a little prize, certainly a certificate in your future, but that's the idea. In the bottom right, you have just a number of instructors who in different dive centers coming together in Koh Tao, Thailand for a cleanup. Everyone joined in and we were searching the reef for different fishing gear, and heard some stories from local fishermen about what we might encounter. And that is the kind of effort that we want to see. Now in the top right, I think it's really cool. That's why I saved it for last. What you're actually seeing here is in Indonesia, a group called WASI, made up of many, many, many dive-centric women and ocean enthusiasts, actually broke the record for the world's largest underwater chain. So you guys might have heard about that in the past that happened in Florida. We'll do a little case study about a new world record we were a part of. But what's amazing is that they used the excitement and the local culture to build this participation and awareness, again, in Indonesia, to come together. But not only that, raise money for Project Aware and make just a huge effort to raise awareness for all these local cultures and local individuals who may not have previously had as much experience looking for debris and understanding why the issues were. And they brought so many people together to do that, using the underwater chain as the main mission to get people into the realm first and then educate them and use conservation as the catalyst. So amazing efforts all around. And now we can kind of look at an example. So I'm going to start to show a few videos now because I want this to be as engaging as possible. So the following is just a video about one of the successful dives we've done in Indonesia, just to get you guys a little bit of an example of how exciting this can be to some dive centers. And so I'm going to preemptively lower the volume here because I don't want to break any of your ears, but without further ado. So right there is just a very simple example. I'm just gonna find here a little bit more, I think. There we go. So here we go, perfect. So I wanted to use this moment just to kind of give you a better visual of what it's like when we're actually recording the data and how to remove the debris. Now, as you can see, everyone was diving, everyone was having a great time. People are excited to be a part of this because many people have been doing just recreational dives and they wanted to do something slightly different. This was with Blue Corner Dive in Indonesia, which I encourage you guys all to go to if you can when this is all over. But as you can see, there's a huge variety of debris that we're finding, from plastic bottles in the top left there to fishing rope and gear right in the middle at the bottom, and much more fishing line on the bottom right. But those are a mixture of actually old rice bags and tons of fishing line. That's what the majority of the dive was. What makes a successful dive against debris? Because at the end of the day, you look at this, this isn't much weight, right? Most of this is plastic, most of this is light material. I think at the end, this was maybe something like 60 pounds or 25 kilograms in that sense. But what really matters is that this is a ton of different plastics scattered throughout the reef that we as a dive community came together to participate in. And with just a few individuals, people were spending most of their dive on one coral head, removing maybe the plastic in the top right there on the fishing line. And that effort is so successful because it's building the confidence for moving marine debris, but more importantly, it's creating that level of excitement that people want to be able to do to take this initiative into their own experience. Because once you participate in a single one of these events, you will see very clearly how exciting it can be to do this on your next dive. And what I like to do is explain how it leads in to that building of awareness. Not only does it build your confidence and skills underwater to participate in cleanups and to submit the data, but it allows you to just see a little bit clearer than you were before. Suddenly, I think some of the best experiences in my career are getting texts from divers that I've worked with over the years, and just a picture of trash that was on the street that was overturned in a before and then picked up by them in an after photo. And you think about that for a moment, you say, why are so many people just sending me pictures of trash? But then when you really think about it, it's probably the most rewarding part of my job is being able to share these experiences with others and be able to receive the passion that they've built just by joining in some of these local events. Because maybe 2 weeks prior they would have walked right past that trash can, and I'm certainly guilty of that too in many respects. But then they saw it, they appreciated it, because they're like, wow, I was doing this in the dive and this is something I can see very clearly now, and they picked it up. And it's really just about the small actions that make a difference. For us to reduce both the plastic that we're using and the engaging types of opportunities to be more conservation minded, it's all about the little things. Yes, we can stop using plastic entirely. Yes, we can do all these things. But the truth is, a lot of plastic is used in the production of many materials, especially in scuba gear. So without it, you probably wouldn't have very much to work with. But the point is try to go from a disposable life to a reusable life, and of course, a renewable life. And for us being able to do our part and see that moment to remove the trash, that's the exact types of steps that we want to use to make a difference over time. So let's talk a little bit more about some more examples where entire communities have come together. So last year in February, I was very lucky to be able to work with Project Aware and travel to Utila in Honduras. Some of you guys might be familiar with the island of Utila, but it's a very passionate place with a lot of young folks who are instructors. It's a backpacking culture. People come through all the time. I'm gonna use this as a photo here. And an absolutely beautiful place where people can come together, dive, and there's just so many experiences. There's about 10 different diving operations. Don't quote me on that, but that's about the total on the island, who are constantly working with backpackers and people coming through for their tourism, doing instructor development courses and everything. And this is a very small island with some amazing dive opportunities, but also things that they need to be aware of. So what I really enjoy telling about this story is how, when I visited, there was, it's always interesting to communicate with dive centers who are so busy. And so there were a few different little bits of lax of communication when we visited along with the PADI staff. And so many of the dive centers didn't actually realize that we were there on island at the time to participate in a cleanup and also work together to get them together. So being a small island that it was, with pretty much less than a mile in length, myself and the PADI staff, we were walking around knocking on the doors of the dive industry, say, hey, we're here. This is who I am. Work with Project Aware. We're looking to do this cleanup action. Do you think this is something you'd be interested in? And what I love the most about Utila is that, whether we were getting, one of the dive master candidates on the phone or someone who was present, we were quickly able to talk to some of the passionate staff at these dive centers. And I think within the scope of a single day, those who may not have realized we're actually on island were quickly on board with this project, even having no further context or prior context. So what was amazing is that we were able to create such an amazing action in such a short time, with everyone coming to participate. And I love this photo on the left because it just shows that you have representatives from different dive centers in different colors, all the way from different agencies working together, because everyone agrees that it's worth it to come together to clean up and to make these differences. In the top right, you can see some snapshots of some of the islands that surrounding them is where we were diving, where you might have some human interaction and some rubbish left over. It was pretty amazing because we had just so many pieces submitted during this effort. We used multiple islands. We had dive centers and different photographers out there. It was just such an exciting effort to see all these dive centers come together. But what's really cool is that we caught the attention of the mayor, and he came out on his little speedboat, and he actually, the funny part of the story is that we had a local group of school kids from Honduras who want to participate in the land cleanup side. And they were really excited and passionate people, but they didn't have a boat to get out to join us. So the mayor volunteered his own private boat to come out and join us on that mission, and took all the school kids out and actually got underwater with us to clean up. So this effort not only had a huge impact on all the dive centers coming together, because on an island like that, they do work together as much as they can, and it's just an amazing experience. But the local mayor and the politicians got involved, of course, because of that intimate setting. So again, a really fun story where you have lots of people coming together. The mayor used his power to get some of the local municipality trucks to clean up and help us count all the debris, which is how we got to such an amazing effort of so many pieces reported. So just to show you guys a little bit of a breakdown, I always like creating a good visual with that. And again, I will brace the volume for all you headphone wearers just to make sure that goes well.
We're doing a dive against debris. We've teamed up with Project Aware and Paddy to run this event. Every single dive shop on the island is taking part, and all the conservation centres too.
So again, I just think it's really nice to be able to show that, while my role is to help bring some of the attention to the rest of the dive community, to the actual work and getting dive centers to work together from our perspective, it's always going to be the passionate dive enthusiasts that are making this reality. And that's just the most rewarding part of this, is working with different people of various experiences and bringing their attention to the work that we're doing. Because really, in my role, it's only a matter of how passionate the rest of the people are to be able to work with them and get them to actually be excited about working together in this extent. So that's where we get to see all the different efforts of, bringing the Project Aware love underwater, diving, removing anything from fans and who knows what, but of course, reporting and sorting the data. That's the most important part. At the end of all these experiences, you're seeing all these people come together to learn the science side so that they can be more mindful and share with Mayor Troy, who is the local mayor, the exciting parts of what we want to do to actually see the difference over time. So that's a really fun one. Some that you guys may have heard of potentially, and one that I would love to share with you is a little bit more of behind the scenes of how this world record dive against debris event in Deerfield Beach, Florida last year happened. And what was amazing about this effort is that it really was a massive effort. You had more than 20 dive centers coming together, hosted by Dixie Divers in Deerfield Beach. And just the sheer amount of oh my gosh, collaboration between the owners of this operation to getting news medias to come, to getting the Guinness Book of World Records to come. I'm going to show you guys some very clear examples so that you guys can have a visualization of the kind of impact that we're talking about. But you can see the beach looked like in the middle picture here. That's what it looked like right before everyone arrived, which was very clean that morning, to just hundreds and hundreds of people setting up, from tents to booths and sponsors and people coming to make this a real huge effort. What was really cool is that in 2015, a shop in Egypt had attained the world record of about 614 divers in the water at once, cleaning up. And as you can see, the number is a little different here, but what's even more fascinating is just how many pieces have been removed entirely. And it does say 1,000, but it's actually meant to be 10,000. That's okay. But let's look at the number below that for a second. If we removed nearly, oh my God, more than a ton of debris, more than 2,500 pounds of it. But if you look at the actual effort here, almost 1,820, 1,826 pounds of it were fishing sinkers, because we're diving a fishing pier here in Deerfield Beach. And this is the type of place that we want to be more aware of. We want to understand how things are happening and exactly how you can get involved. So, this was a huge effort, and we actually ended up, making a big impact in the news media over time, because so many people came together successfully. Now, I wanted to give you guys a visualization of what just nearly 5,000 sinkers look like. So these are buckets in buckets on buckets of sinkers, all coming from a single dive effort. We actually had teams lowering buckets into the water to pick it back up. That's how we did this logistically. I sadly wasn't diving on this one. I was operating the drone to film most of it. And I was also very much located with a team of amazing volunteers, sorting and counting every single piece of debris that came through. So the divers were all along the pier, and we just like dunked everything in. You'll see shortly in the video what that looks like. But we were counting everything, and it was just insurmountable that we got to more than 10,000 pieces recorded by human hands. And that is the level that we were working on. I see that just to go for it, I see that we have a kind of a question here from Maddie. What are the sinkers generally made of? And just like scuba gear, I'd say they can stem from many different materials. Most of it is metal-based, but people get creative. If you go to your local fishing store, you'll actually see that most of it might be lead or leftover metal materials used from processing. Because if you look at this picture, you can actually see that some of it are different shapes and different sizes. Some of it's just scrap metal, honestly. People get very creative, and in Americas, we have more of a production chain to make more traditional style, which is lead-based and metal-based. But at the same time, people will use anything from excessive amounts of, conglomerated plastic to, I don't know, I've seen metal, plastic, cloth, everything that could be used to just weigh things down and stay down there. But as you can see, most of this is metal. Now, that's a great question. We're seeing here if there are any eco-friendly sinkers that you know of as an alternative. So my advice in these kind of scenarios, and what we did here specifically, I think is a good example of this. Now you see 5,000 sinkers or so. So what's important is that these were all underwater. None of these were on land. Some of them had been underwater for months, probably years, and more likely. And so what we did is we actually worked with the local fishing industry. And although eco-friendly is a different term here, we were reselling these back to the fishing industry and raising money for donations. So we were raising money for charities to support future cleanup efforts. We were raising money for, Project Aware, or just any effort that it took to really make a difference. So from an eco-friendly perspective, in this specific example, we knew that these were already in production, right? There's 5,000 or more sinkers already here. Last thing we want to do is waste them. So we did sell them back to the fishing industry. We donated some to some enthusiasts who wanted to melt them down and reuse them into art. So pretty much that's a good segue into the next theme I've seen, is making them into art sculptures or repurposing the metal, because metal is really easily reused. And so there's just any number of ideas here, but the most common one that I see, and the one that I also encourage when working with dive centers, is often, get what you can, talk to your local fishing regulations, because that builds a relationship between you and the fishing industry. And although it may seem at first, something that may not be as fruitful, having positive relationships with the fishing industry is so important to having successes and more awareness at less, fishing and debris entering the ocean. Because when you take a picture like this and you show it to the actual fishing community, and they can visualize just how many of their efforts were down there, it's a tremendous experience, and they start to realize a few things, and they want to work with you more. And I always find that building positive relationships is always more important than pointing fingers in any sense of the word. But what's really important, again, is that for every sinker, for the most part, I'd say about 85% of them, there was a fishing line attached. So you can only imagine how many pieces of fishing line we were encountering at any given time. But with the 5,000 or so sinkers that we found, we were able to successfully put them back into circulation in a sustainable way, I'd say, and raise money for conservation and build awareness, which is really the most important goal we were looking to achieve. Very cool. So let's kind of take a look and see some of the excitement that was being shared alongside this event in person. I wanted to share that with you. And again, I'm definitely going to make sure the volume here is good for all you guys listening in.
Today, this was an official Guinness World Records title attempt for largest underwater cleanup. The mark to beat was 614 people. That was set in Egypt in 2015. I counted everyone going into the water, as you saw, most of you, and I can now announce that today in Deerfield Beach, Florida, USA, you had 633.
So it's very exciting. It's very fun. It's very inspiring in a lot of ways, I know. If only we could just return to that state of normality. I know things might be a little different in the future, of course, that being the most important part. But what's amazing is just the ability to bring people together in this opportunity, and showing them that things like cleanups can bring so many different people together, so many different organizations, and many opportunities as well. So ultimately, what we're kind of seeing here is just this tremendous human effort coming together and being excited by removing trash from the ocean. And all of that brings a really big sense of value to what's happening here. So it's really exciting. I think we have another question just about what's happening with the weights again. And yes, I think we were discussing here that maybe there's some other opinions about how melting lead and things like that isn't healthy. Of course, that might be an obvious answer to some. But in this specific situation, the context of removing 5,000 sinkers that were truly underwater is how to sustainably raise awareness for the fishing gear that we are recovering. What does it mean to have all of this metal in our possession, and what can we do to make a positive interaction? So for us, the decision at the time with the local community and the fishing regulations was, in this specific circumstance, to bring some of the value back to the fishing community, to raise money for conservation, and to build better relationships so that we can have more access to the pier. Because ultimately, the reason we did not have access to the pier to do events like this was the fishing community had the rights. So once we were able to kind of create a better relationship, selling back the fishing gear, doing things like that to be reused, as eco-friendly or eco-friendly not that might be, it was the best choice in our circumstances to build that relationship with the local community and allow for future cleanups, which actually was very successful, because we were meant to, as you can imagine, have another big cleanup in June. But not only that, we were meant to have even more opportunities to work together as a community with this specific pier. So we were going to lead it to adopt this dive site with the Project Aware program and actually have more impacts with future cleanups on a smaller scale consistently. And that was the success of this major event that brought so much excitement to this community and brought just so many dive centers across South Florida together. And so it really is these experiences just to show, how whether they're big or small efforts or just a few instructors, what really matters is exactly how much enthusiasm you guys have and how much awareness you guys can bring to the work that's happening across the globe. And so when you see efforts like this, it actually did inspire some of the efforts I showed previously with the women in pink. Because of this event, they were inspired to go and try and beat the world record as well. And those are the kind of chain reactions you can see across the globe, is bringing that value of the dive community across to each other. So we're almost done here. So I'm just going to move on to just ways that you guys can stay connected. I encourage all the questions you guys might have to give any more specific context. But in your future endeavors, I really encourage that you guys come together and bring, some awareness to our social media pages here. From the Project Aware Foundation, really easy, pretty straightforward. You guys can even use the word #AwareImpact in your dives, because we are always, scanning the dive community to share some of the work that we're doing and really make more awareness. But I'm also going to give some of my information here so that you guys can reach me and how to stay in touch with the work that we're doing. And so I think it's really important to build, a little bit of training, a little bit of excitement for future endeavors. So I know that if you guys have any questions, that's my role. My role is to help answer emails, to help build confidence at dive centers. And if you guys as dive enthusiasts have any questions about how to get involved, then I will leave my contact information up at the end so you guys can connect with us. But really, as we kind of move into the end here, yep, there we go. There it is. I just wanted to thank all of you guys so much, because at the end of the day, the work that I do is just minuscule in comparison to the work that the dive community is doing at large. The best part of the role that I possess at Project Aware is to bring the attention of the work that is happening all across the globe in different dive communities, like some of the amazing efforts happening at Dive Ninjas and some of the conservation-centric actions, is just to bring that value back to the business sense, to really show people that this is the way of the world right now, and that being more involved in this work is just going to be extremely amazing about you guys making your impact and showing that every dive can really be a survey dive. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I guess I wouldn't be here in any respect of the word without all of you passionate people and just more excitement building. And I know that things are different right now, and I know things are hard, but if there's anything I've learned from connecting with so many other passionate people, people are getting creative right now in this time of what some may consider to be unproductivity, but rather people are thinking, people are creative, people are creating. And it's just an amazing opportunity to share that with the world. So I see a lot of hope. I see a lot of beautiful things to come when this all is over and we can return to that place that we love most, the ocean. So thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. That's a great presentation. Thank you for going through everything and teaching us all about that. Super awesome, man. So guys, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We'll read some out over to Jack and everything like that and get rocking and rolling. We've got a few coming in already. So let's start. Christine says, I actually got Project Aware certified through Dive Ninjas. Thank you so much for this very informative talk and showing us your passion to spread this movement. I manage a health food store from the 2 blocks from the ocean in Delaware, and would be highly interested in getting some kind of signage for our store to help promote Dive Against the Breeze. Is there any way I could obtain this?
Yeah, so right there, if you are in, let's see, health food store, very cool. I really think that would just be a matter of emailing me, and then we'll discuss the rest. I think it's that simple. That's the kind of stuff we do. We give a lot of promotional materials for dive centers, whether it be you're already engaged with some of our programs, like the Adopt a Dive site, like they were doing on the fishing pier when I showed that world record event, something that would be a consistent action, something to promote both inside your dive center, or even, really the important thing is that you don't have to be a business to adopt a center. So, you don't have to be a dive center is what I mean. So then in that very much respect, if you want to take actions like that, let's get in touch and let's build something together.
Cool. Sounds awesome. Awesome. So Julia says, your name is actually Fishman?
Yes. So I like to save that for the end. Maybe it was showing up on my screen, but I like to say that I never really had a choice in my career in life, but I don't regret it even for a moment. And my family, of course, also represents the name, I think, quite well. I started my adventures in diving at a very young age, I think as soon as you possibly could. My parents have been diving since the 70s, and the ocean has just been a part of my life. So I am just so thankful to be able to share that with you. And yes, the name does make it a little easier and fun on the certification cards.
That's awesome. Super great. Perfect. So Jose says, thanks, Jack, for this important presentation. Most of us are aware of the large amount of waste in the oceans. Although this doesn't address the issue of fishing gear waste, a lot of waste enters the ocean through major and minor waterways like rivers. Do you have any initiatives to tackle the problem of debris before entering these waterways?
Yes, that's a really good question. So the essence of what Dive Against Debris is meant to do is to help bring attention to this issue. So in a more clear sense of the word, if we're reporting data that consists of plastic bags, plastic bottles, and branded things, maybe it's branded, right? So in Thailand, we were using an example where they had 7-Eleven branded bags. Now, if you ask me, I think it's a little bit foolish for a company to brand all of their bags because within one fell swoop, you know exactly where they come from. So to use that as an example, in Thailand, we knew that they were being entered in from rivers. Now, while Dive Against Debris is very applicable in rivers and waterways of any sort, the idea here is to understand the trend from where debris of all sorts, fishing gear, of course, being a more specific one, comes from. So if we're able to consistently get the data and measure it over time, then we can trace it to specific single events, to specific kind of trends of what's being used, like the 7-Eleven. We knew where it was, so we knew where it was coming from. It's that simple. So the more data we get, the clearer that picture becomes, if that makes sense. So yes, very much do we constantly work in dive communities where that is the essence. And many, 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 many places in the world, the ocean pollution stems from land-based sources ultimately. So yes, if that answers your question, I hope it's the data-based connection.
Awesome. And I think too, like, but the other thing too is that I've noticed, at least what I've seen, and too, is a lot of the communities that are doing Dive Against Debris are also kind of instituting beach cleanups and other cleanups. I mean, here in Cabo, there's organizations that work in the dry riverbeds and the arroyos and things like that, cleaning up garbage. But it's also tied to ocean cleanups and all that. So they're kind of expanding beyond that too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So Sue asks, you mentioned that the rate of debris cleanup has been increasing in the past few years. Do you know if this is because there are more divers and initiatives to clean up dive sites, or because there's more debris getting into the ocean to be picked up?
That's a really clever question. I like that. I think I'm going to be very clear in the sense that conservation was always something that people understand and people believe in. I think from forever. Let's just be safe with that answer. But what's happening is that the more structured that our programs become, the more easy it is for training and understanding to be spread throughout the world, leads to an increase of actual data and scientific increases in productivity. So from 2011, when we introduced this, as you can imagine, it was a slow start. But it is a testament in recent years because data is being submitted in mass. And I think that it can really easily be attributed to, recent awareness, that the recent culture within the past 5 years even has been so tremendously more conservation focused. And all of these passionate people and leaders have brought more attention so that the new culture of dive tourism is centering more around ecotourism. And I think it's this change from a more eco approach to tourism, and people are seeking out eco programs. So it's becoming more business savvy, I'd say, to have these opportunities to your customers and to everyone involved. So I do see this trend so significantly being directly correlated to the culture becoming more eco-friendly and more dive centers actually having the training to offer these programs. So with more training becomes better, opportunities to dive against debris and more data. So it's an amazing experience, and I really see us hitting our goals very soon, as we can all get back there.
Really great. So Maddie asks, what's the most absurd thing you have ever found during a dive against debris?
This is one of my favorite questions, and I'll take it back to Florida, which is where I got most of my start and spent most of my career as a dive instructor for years, which I should mention is this beautiful place behind me is actually Molasses Reef in the Florida Keys. One of my favorite pictures that was taken right after the hurricane when, funny enough, like the visibility was so good because the hurricane was still churning in Jacksonville when this picture was taken, that the visibility was like unlimited. So anyway, that's my little geek out moment. But the craziest thing that I found was a 1950s, or I think it was like 60s era television, like a proper boob tube. And the funniest thing about it was that it had like the screen still in place, but was like open in the back. So you could see like the whole like chemical like process that was happening. Obviously there's no chemicals anymore, but this thing was so heavy. It weighed like 70, like, I don't know, like 50 pounds all filled with water. And so we needed like 2 teams with a lift bag just to get it out. It's like, imagine, trying to carry one of those plasma TVs these days. You probably could do it, but like this thing, I was like, holy moly, you didn't really understand what it was until you got it up with the lift bags. And you're like, how did this get down here? Put this here and when, So that was one of my favorite stories because it brought some teamwork to the equation and was so much heavier than I thought it was at first.
That's amazing. It's awesome. That'd be hilarious to find and just wonder how it even got there.
That's the question I'm asking. Yeah.
Like, you know where I want to put this? Somewhere safe in the ocean where they can't find it.
One more I just wanted to add is like after hurricane removals, when things have been uncovered after many years, we actually did find a circa 1978 scuba tank. And we pulled it out with a team of women. Actually, I'll attribute that to Shayna, one of my coworkers in Rainbow Reef. Her name was Shayna, and also another coworker, her name is Katie. They found this item, and it was an old scuba tank. They pulled it out together, and they brought it to the History of Diving Museum to have it like examined, and it still had air in it. Wow. Like from late 70s, like that's when it was dated to. And that was crazy because it was hidden underneath a coral, underneath a rock that was overturned. So it had been like grown around and still was, had air in it. So that was amazing. Crazy stuff.
That's amazing. Awesome. So Raphael asks, is there any information we can take to our local dive shops to help stimulate or kickstart some cleanup events or fundraisers?
Very cool.
Now is post-COVID that dive shops will be more concerned about self-preservation and not receptive of sharing funds. Hopefully that's not the new norm.
I'm going to answer that in 2 parts, as it's a 2-part question. So the first one is absolutely. So if I were to, go back, and again, I'll try and like when this goes live, I'll try and give you just like a few resources that will link directly to some of the things we talked about. But for you, Raphael, if you build a MyOcean profile and you download the app, then you'll have access to the data and you can start to submit it. So you can go to this dive center and say, hey, I am familiar with what it means to do an underwater cleanup. I have done some or I've conducted them. I would like to work with you to adopt a local dive site. So this leads into the next piece, which I think is where the dive industry has been heading, according to the communication I've been having, which is a lot of return to appreciating your local sources, right? Whether it be a quarry, whether it be the freshwater source you know and love, your local beach, really bringing the attention back to the local sense. That's literally what we've all been doing, right? Taking walks in our neighborhood and stuff. So I think that while I understand the second part of your question about the funds and self-preservation, I do think that's important, especially within the realm of a business. But bringing that education back to local means more opportunities for you to get involved and encourage them to do more locally minded conservation ethics, like adopting a dive site, submitting the surveys, and understanding where some of the issues you're finding. We know that, for example, that right now the new trend is types of COVID related debris, right? Whether it be masks and different items we're finding. So we know that we're looking for specific trends as a relation to this current state. So I think in terms of the fundraising, that's fine. You know what I mean? If you want to build a fundraiser for something that you're passionate about that helps your local community, I think that's a great idea. And you should use our programs, if you'd like, to kind of build the momentum to get them to come together around something that is very standardized and very easy to implement for you. So if you have any other questions, of course, I'd love to work with you, Raphael. So please do email me and we can talk more about this and how you can do this specifically.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think too is, I mean, at least what we've seen myself and everything like that is that there are still some of the shops have actually started to go in other ways. You know what I mean? Like I know with us, like having the extra time to not be running nonstop and all that has allowed us to, put the efforts into, now we're organizing adopting sites here in Cabo, as well as organizing monthly underwater cleanups and things like that we never really had the time to do before. And even in other shops, I was speaking to a colleague here in Cabo, and she was talking about how, like, having all this extra time has actually made her start to focus more on conservation within her business and looking at new ways of doing things, and like within the shop and within their tours and all that kind of stuff too. So I think it may be a little surprising that the time is actually, instead not just, some companies are going to be just focused on money, but I think some others are actually starting to go the other way too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we're hoping to just make this as easy as possible, because when we come back, we know that it's going to make a difference to be able to have access to more opportunities to keep people local and do that. And we really have always had the answer, just bring little bits of conservation in, and with a little bit more training and awareness, these events, like I've shown video of, are always applicable where you are. And so great question. I know that I was spending more time sharing stories and kind of going in depth with our programs, but Maddie has asked more about the Adopt a Dive site. To be very clear, what that essentially is a commitment to adopt a local waterway, a river, a quarry, freshwater, saltwater, whatever it is to you, somewhere you care about. And this stems from the basic sense that we know that if you love a place, that's where you're going to take care of it. And we know that for diving local, it's really up to the locals to take care of what they love. And so we want to give people the tools, the promotional materials, the marketing power to really take that love and make it into a business practice. And I know I say business practice, but the idea is that your business doesn't have to be business. The word business doesn't have to be a bad thing, is what I'm saying. It can mean something eco-sustainable. It can mean something that provides value for the local community. So Adopt a Dive Site is a simple commitment to submit marine debris data at least once a month. And in doing so, you're providing that value and awareness for the local community. And again, it comes down to, if you're on a lake, right, and you know that around 4th of July or Canada Day, whatever it might be, you have this event, you're probably going to expect there to be more marine debris there. And bringing that attention to the local community and to your customers, or just anyone that's being involved with the Adopt a Dive Site, is how you build this trend of where the marine debris is coming from and when. And because we can see it over time, we actually, at the end of the period, will build a scientific report using your data and share that back with you and work with you to share it with local community leaders. So we'll provide the scientific information that you are providing in a concise way, with visualization, with photos that you provided, with the data, with our suggestions on tweaks and how you can kind of get better involved with the work you're doing, and present that with you to the local community leaders. That is how we make a difference. Because if you ask them to say, hey, let's put a plastic ban on, right? Although that's a great sentiment, without the data and understanding why, they may not listen at first value. And so when we do things like the world record cleanup, stems from the ability to consistently access the pier via Adopt a Dive Site, or in Utila, where the mayor did pass a plastic ban because he was diving with us firsthand and saw the issues. You can't hide that, right? So the data is a way of putting your money where your mouth is in a lot of ways. I use that because I'm a little bit of a New Yorker and I don't mind using that kind of terminology, but the idea is that we can take the actual value and the undeniable truth of the matter and bring it to the people who need to know it. And that is how you make a difference over time, with evidence and proof and action.
Awesome. Really, really great. Well, I think that's all the questions we've got for today. Thank you so much, Jack, for taking the time to come by and talk with us and everything like that. It's been incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay. I mean, it's just a pleasure to be able to share some more community-centric opportunities. It's really what I love most about this whole dive industry, is just how many people are so passionate and doing some amazing work. And sometimes it just takes that. I think that the key takeaway that I always like to leave with people is that if you're doing work, if you're passionate, if you want to bring conservation into your community, you're not alone. I promise you this. If you feel like it's difficult to get started now and you feel like you just don't know where to start, contact us. We can put you in touch with other people who've been there and maybe we've gotten a little bit further. Or we can put you in touch with some of the people, like you've seen in the video, who've been doing this for years and bring some more value. Like, don't just hear it from me, hear it from the people who've been doing this successfully for so long, and know that if you want to make a difference, it really does start with something small. And each of those small actions will lead to big waves of change over time. So thank you so much for being able to share a little bit of that, Jay.
Awesome, and thank you again. Thank you for everybody for tuning in today. Tomorrow we're back with the whale shark awareness course in the morning, and then we're back with ocean stories next Thursday with Miriam to talk about sea turtles and all that. Enjoy your weekends if we don't see you at the courses, and we'll see you guys soon. Jack, thanks again, brother. We'll see you soon. Keep in touch, man.
Thank you so much. Will do.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.